Otto's fascination with courtroom dramas next brought him to Anatomy of a Murder, and once again there was controversy on and off the set. It was the story of an army officer on trial for killing a man he claims was trying to rape his wife. A small-town lawyer agrees to defend the killer, who was confronted by a slick, ambitious prosecutor.
All right, stand by. Can I see how you start? Action.
I went to New York and met Otto. At that time, he was living in an apartment across the street, I believe, from the Russian consulate. And the occasion was Anatomy of a Murder, a novel. It was an enormous bestseller. It was turned on a trial, and the trial turned on rape. And one of the problems with the piece was there didn't seem to be any way to do it unless you used the medical terms. Well, in those years, the medical terms were taboo. So I saw Otto. I had met Otto before because I'd been an actor and I'd been interviewed by Otto a number of times, but he didn't remember me at all, you know. Well, anyway, I told him about my misgivings about trying to do Anatomy of a Murder, and I said, I don't see how I can write this unless I can use the words that are necessary. And Otto said, Bendel, you write it, I'll shoot it. Well, you know, I'd heard that before. Well, the fact is, I did write it the way I said I was going to, and he did shoot it that way. And then he came up against the censorship board. Well, the censorship board at that time was almost impossible. But since the terms were all medical terms, Otto fought for them and threatened, as a matter of fact, to release the picture without any kind of a recommendation from the board at all. Now, he made only one compromise, and he called me on the telephone, and he said, oh, Otto always called me when he wanted to change the script, which was an interesting thing in the Hollywood life. And he said, we have to change the word penetration to violation. He said, that's the only thing I gave on.
Anatomy was the second picture I made, and I was on Broadway. I think. No, wait a minute. Yes, I was. Doing something, but I can't remember what it was. And Otto had seen me, I think, yeah. Anyway, he sent me the script. And he wanted me to play the bartender, which was a nice little part. And I, of course, was a relatively unknown actor, obviously, except I was known in New York. Anyway, I read the script and said, wow, there's this dazzling joker who comes in, the attorney from Lansing named Dancer, and you got a name like Dancer and you're from Lansing, I mean, how can you lose, you know? It was a terrific, showy part, in other words. So I went in to see him. Otto, as you know, was a very imposing man, very intimidating man. And he said, well, what, do you want to play this part? What? I said, no. Why not? I said, I'm going to play this other part. Oh. Okay. Just like that. Never thought a few seconds. I was stunned. And that was the kind of fellow he was. He was he could make a decision, at least I found out that he was a decisive personality. Flamboyant, very colorful man, and very sweet-natured man in many ways. Very gentle man in many ways, although he'd have these enormous tirades and that were so famous about him, you know, where he'd turn purple and the back of his head would get orange, and, you know, it was frightening to see him like that, because you thought surely he was going to drop dead in front of your eye. But I don't know how much of that was for effect, how much of it was his acting training. I have no idea. But everybody, I think everybody liked the script. They liked Wendell May's script. And they loved the idea of Jimmy Stewart, you know. working with Jim. The idea of working with Jimmy was so wonderful with me, and we did so many things in the courtroom. I was chained to the courtroom. I didn't work anywhere else, and I was weeks and weeks in that courtroom. No, I just thought the experience of working with Jimmy Stewart is the memorable thing to me.
Now, Mr. Dancer, you asked for the recess. What's your problem?
There was a little suggestion I wanted to make, Your Honor.
By all means.
Since the defense plea is insanity, the prosecution has retained a psychiatrist. Under the statute, we have the right to petition for a mental examination of the defendant by our own doctor. Are you familiar with that statute, Mr. Beakley?
Moderately.
I think it would only delay things to file a formal petition, so why don't we just get together and sort of informally agree to ask His Honor for an adjournment, only a day or so, and then our doctor can visit with the defendant. I think it would save everyone a great deal of time, don't you, Mr. Beakley?
Yes, I'm sure it will.
Good.
But suppose you just go ahead and file that formal petition anyway. Of course, you're a little late, aren't you? Well, maybe His Honor will overlook that. And then I'd sort of like the jury to see that you think our insanity plea has some merit.
There really won't be any need for our doctor to examine your client. Naturally, I was only following the usual procedure.
Well, naturally, I'm all for it.
Well, do you wish to file the petition or not, Mr. Dancer?
Yes, Your Honor.
That
I
won't
think
be
we'll-
necessary.
Oh, that's right. It won't be necessary at all.
Skirmish over. Shall we join now on the field of battle?
I just was fascinated by the whole thing, and it was really I'd never experienced this before, and as I say, haven't since. But I always was very impressed, and it did something to my performance and my feeling about the picture, to realize that I was doing this, and I was doing it in exactly the same place where the actual thing took place, whether it was in the courtroom, whether it was in the bar, whether it was outside the bar, and or scenes with Lee Remick outside the courthouse. When I would think, and it kept coming back to me, when I would think that we're doing something that actually has been done before, only this is for real, in this same location and with the same people saying a lot of the same things that the original real people did. It was a very special occasion, and all of this, I think, was one of the things brought about by Otto Preminger, which I think is a wonderful thing. Lee Remick did such a fascinating job. This is something you just sort of dream about, and then some of them I'd sort of like compare to Margaret Sullivan and Grace Kelly. They're this type of thing. Lee was just wonderful.
You might be interested to know that your lie detector test turned out in your favor.
Of course it did. I could have told you it would.
And you weren't worried about it.
No. Why should I be?
Well, would you like to have something to worry about?
Silly.
Like your husband watching us from his cell window? All right. All right, let's have it.
George C. Scott, he hadn't done very many pictures, but this was a very good. When the picture was released, it was very good, and started him in a very good career in the movie. My father, back in Indiana, Pennsylvania, where I was born and raised, and he had a hardware store back there all his life. And he never quite understood this idea of me becoming a movie actor. And the whole idea of the movies and but somebody came into the store and told him, and he said, boy, I saw your son in a picture in a picture the other day, and it's a dirty picture. I kind of, well, that evening, my dad called me up and said, now, wait a minute. A fellow just came in and told me about this picture, something about a murder or something, but he said it's a dirty picture. And I said, no, Dad, I don't think it's about things that are sort of questionable, but it's not. He said, well, I don't like the thing at all, and I'm going to go to the Strand, the fellow owner of the Strand Theater down here, and I'm going to ask him not to show the picture here, and I'm going over to the Indiana Evening Gazette and tell them not to show the picture. Well, the fellow didn't do exactly what my dad asked him to do. The picture and the Indiana Evening Gazette didn't. And, but it put in what my dad had to say about it. And the picture did better in Indiana, Pennsylvania than it had, and my mother saw it and went to my dad and I said, Saturday afternoon, after you finish work at the, well, now I want you to come and see the picture. And he said, I don't want to see the picture. I'm not going to see the picture. And I think it's a disgrace that the picture goes out with this filthy story and everything, and that everybody in town went to see it. I don't think that, well, I talked to him several times about it, and he didn't change his mind. About, maybe 4 months later, he called me, and it turned out that he sneaked down to a drive-in in Homer City, and all by himself without telling anybody, and sneaked into the drive-in and saw the picture. And he called me, he said, I just wanted to tell you I saw the picture. And I sort of take back a lot of what I said. There were just things in it that I don't see why you had to do. And one of them that I especially didn't think was necessary was when you were in the courtroom and pleading the case, well, I didn't think you should have held the woman's panties up for everybody to see. And I said, well, I never, this was, for the defense, this was a very good point. And he said, well, I would have cut that out. And if you can do anything about it, if you can cut that panty thing out,
it has so many things about it that I like, including what it says, which is I think one of the things that Otto was, it perhaps best sums up Preminger's pictures, Anatomy. That's why the French would call it his testament film. It's the one you say, you run this one and you say, that's Preminger. And it is, I think that is, you could say that's Preminger, because the point of the picture is, as Jimmy Stewart says at one point, and you can go to the clip now, where he says, people aren't good or bad, they're both. And he himself, Stewart, who is, you know, in American mythological terms, the personification of good, he is shown to be both good and bad in the movie too, even though most of it's shown through his eyes. Yet the way Preminger does it, he shows you that the man has his foibles. He's not perfect. He's got his repressions, his problems, his quirks, his eccentricities, his whatever it is, and that's a profoundly humanist point that you could say Renoir expressed in a more poetic form. So I think a lot of people say Preminger was a liberal, talking about his liberality in his politics, but really he was a humanist in his spirit.
What did you know about your father?
All I needed to know. He took care of me and of my mother for as long as she lived. He was always there when I needed him. That's what I know about my father, Mr. Biegler. Will that back up Laura Mannion's story?
Glenn, I don't want to get at you. I don't want to hurt you. I appreciate your affection for your father. But as a lawyer, I've had to learn that people aren't just good or just bad, but people are many things. And I kind of have a feeling that Barney Quill was many things.
I don't want to hear that.
No, please. Please, now hear me out.
I just think he was a great director. And now how do you balance that with the stories of the tyrant on the set and all that? I don't know. As you said, everybody's good and bad. Maybe that would have to apply to the master himself.
Anatomy of a Murder was a fine success. The film received 7 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Actor for James Stewart, Supporting Actor George C. Scott, and Screenplay Adaptation Wendell Mays.
Your Honor, I don't blame Mr. Dancer for feeling put upon. I'm just a humble country lawyer trying to do the best I can against this brilliant prosecutor from the big city of Lansing.